Hey guys, and welcome back to EQ Planes, and today I'll be taking what was a pretty exciting trip for me on the Hawaiian Airlines 717 from Kona on the Big Island to Kahului on Maui. But before I get into talking about why I find the 717 to be such an exciting aircraft, let's take a look at what might be one of the most unique aircraft terminals that I've ever flown through. Now, Kona's airport is almost entirely open air. It gives you the impression that this is quite the quaint and small little operation, despite this being actually quite a busy international airport, with it receiving aircraft as large as the 777 and having flights to many places across the United States, Canada, and even Tokyo. You really do get a unique Hawaiian experience while walking around in this airport, and I'm sure it leaves quite the impression on many of the travelers that go through it. And for those of you wondering, well, what happens if it rains or the weather outside isn't so nice, which, although unlikely in Hawaii, is something that happens, and fortunately there are plenty of overhangs and stores and restaurants under cover as well. Now, my only real complaint about Kona's airport from an AvGeek perspective, or at least this part of Kona's airport, is that it does provide some pretty lackluster views of the aircraft at gate. Often they're blocked by vegetation or seemingly some kind of wooden overhang or fence structure blocking the view. Now, one thing that I will mention though is that Kona Airport is receiving an expansion, which is a bit more of a traditional terminal. However, it is nice that it has air conditioning and it does provide really good views of the aircraft sitting at their gates. They only have part of this new terminal open now, and my aircraft just happened to be situated in a gate which was right in front of it, but the next part of the terminal should be opening soon. But with all that being said, let's take a closer look at the Hawaiian 717, which will be bringing me to Kahului today. Registered November 490 Hotel Alpha, this 22-year-old 717 has had a pretty colorful past, having been delivered to Impulse Airlines in Australia and also flying for both Jetstar and Qantas. I was certainly hoping to get on November 475 Hotel Alpha, which is the last Hawaiian Airlines 717 left in their old livery as of January 2023. However, I'm certainly glad to be flying such a legendary and historic aircraft regardless. Another one of the big advantages of Kona Airport is that you board by airstare no matter what aircraft you're taking, as there are no jet bridges. But now, as we board this Hawaiian 717, for those of you who may not know why this is such a special aircraft, let me explain. The 717 is an aircraft which is becoming increasingly rare, with there only being 3 operators in the world, that being Delta, Qantas, and Hawaiian Airlines. This aircraft was actually developed under Mcdonnell Douglas as the Md-95. However, when the two companies merged, Boeing took on the aircraft and named it the Boeing 717. Douglas had developed the Md-95 and its bigger brother, the Md-90, as an upgraded version of the Md-80 aircraft, which themselves were upgraded version of the legendary Dc-9s. The Dc-9 and Md-80 were incredibly successful and iconic aircraft in aviation history, with the Md-80 being made especially famous through its role at American Airlines. However, the 717 and the Md-90 unfortunately did not receive the same amount of success as their predecessors, being relatively unsuccessful aircraft right from the get-go. So now, with the Dc-9, Md-80, and Md-90 being effectively gone from passenger service almost worldwide, that leaves the 717 as kind of the last member of this long and historic family of aircraft. So you can definitely see why I'm excited to fly this aircraft once again, with the last time having been in 2018. Another interesting fact about the Hawaiian Airlines 717 is that all of them are named after birds. But now, with that 717 history rant out of the way, let's talk about the seating configuration on their 717s. Starting with first class, we have 8 seats in a 2x2 configuration right at the front of the aircraft. And right behind that, we have 120 seats in economy in an interesting 3x2 configuration. So I definitely recommend sitting on the left side of the aircraft if you don't want to have a middle seat. When it comes to my first impressions of the cabin, it doesn't feel overly dated, but it isn't exactly the newest thing that you've seen either. The overhead bins are quite small, and the ceiling's quite short, but it really isn't that bad for an aircraft of this size. I would also like to suggest row 23, as it gives you a pretty good view of the wings and the engines, and sitting this far back and being right close to the engine, you get a pretty good sound from it, and you certainly feel the power of it. However, do be aware, in the last 2 rows, your window view is completely blocked by the engine. But now, with all that being said, I'll get into more detail about the seat when we're in the air. In the meantime, enjoy this takeoff from Kona International Airport. now that we're in the air, let's take a closer look at this Hawaiian Airlines 717 seat. Starting out with the legroom certainly isn't bad for such a small aircraft. I'm 6'2" and it was definitely okay. However, the spar of the seat in front of me did kind of restrict footroom. This tray table, I must admit though, was definitely comedically small. However, it's not like you'll be doing much on a 40-minute flight, so it doesn't really matter all that much. The padding on the seats was definitely pretty slim, but they weren't overly uncomfortable, especially considering that the longest flights that these aircraft fly are typically about an hour and a half. With regards to the backseat pocket, it was surprisingly well stocked for such a short flight. It had an in-flight magazine, which you are allowed to take with you home, along with your typical air sickness bag and safety card as well. And another thing that was nice of Hawaiian Airlines was the juice service that they provided of POG. Definitely nice to have gotten any kind of service on a flight that was less than an hour. Unfortunately, there'd be no loo review today as the flight was pretty short, so the seatbelt sign stayed on the entire time. One interesting quirk about the cabin though, which unfortunately I wasn't able to get a good picture of, is the exit door at the back of the aircraft. Unlike older series like the Md80, there is no air stairs that lead up through the back of the aircraft. However, there is an emergency exit there, which in the event of an emergency will cause the tail cone to pop off, and you can exit out the rear of the aircraft. But now, enjoy this beautiful landing into Maui's Kahului airport. But be sure to stick around for my final thoughts on the 717 and how it compares to Southwest Airlines, which is the only other major airline to compete on these inter-island Hawaiian routes. Well, now let's get into my final thoughts on the aircraft, starting out with Hawaiian Airlines. Hawaiian Airlines' product was definitely solid, however I don't really think it competes all that well with Southwest Airlines. Definitely preferred their service of juice over water, but that's a relatively minor detail, and you'll find much more comfortable seats on Southwest Airlines' 737 MAXs. However, that's certainly not to say that Hawaiian Airlines' product was bad by any means. It was definitely passable, and not something that I felt incredibly uncomfortable in. However, with that being said, the 717 is certainly an amazing experience to have as an av geek, and I'll definitely be trying to get on this aircraft as many times as I can before it's eventually retired. But yeah, the 717 certainly doesn't have all that much time left at Hawaiian Airlines, and in the world in general. Qantas has indicated that they'll be selling their entire fleet. Delta says the aircraft will be retired by 2025, and Hawaiian Airlines says they are looking to get rid of the aircraft sometime before the end of the decade. However, they have yet to choose a replacement just yet. So really, in the end, it comes down to what you prefer. If you're looking for a better experience, I'd highly suggest taking Southwest Airlines, but if you're an av geek, Hawaiian Airlines is definitely the clear choice for now. And before ending the video, another interesting thing to note is just how much prices have dropped on these routes in the past years. It used to be upwards of almost $300 one way for some of these inter-island flights, but ever since Southwest came in, those prices dropped a lot. So that was definitely a benefit. But anyways, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and hope to see you guys back next time.